I still remember the exact moment I realized my family had erased me. It wasn't when my uncle stopped answering my calls. It wasn't when my cousins suddenly blocked me on social media. It wasn't even when neighbors started looking away every time I drove down Maple Street. It was when I pulled into my grandmother's church parking lot and saw 2 security guards standing beside the front doors. One of them stepped forward before I even turned off my engine. "Are you Emily Carter?" I nodded, confused. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we've been instructed not to allow you inside." For a second, I honestly thought they had mistaken me for someone else. "There has to be some misunderstanding," I said. "My grandmother's funeral is today." The older guard looked uncomfortable. "I know, we were specifically told to expect you." Those words hit harder than anything else. They were expecting me. They had planned this. Inside that church was the woman who had raised me for nearly half my childhood, the woman who taught me how to ride a bike, helped me through my parents' divorce, slipped $20 bills into my backpack before every school trip, and never once forgot my birthday. And somehow, I wasn't allowed to say goodbye. I looked past the guards through the glass doors. Rows of black clothing. White lilies. My cousins hugging relatives. My Uncle Daniel standing near the front with his arm around his wife, greeting guests like he was hosting a holiday dinner instead of burying his own mother. He looked right at me. For a brief second, our eyes met. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He simply turned his back and kept talking as if I didn't exist. That hurt more than being stopped at the door. I pulled out my phone and called him. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Blocked. My hands started shaking. One of the guards quietly said, "Maybe you should head home." Home? How was I supposed to go home knowing my grandmother's casket was less than 50 feet away? I walked toward the entrance anyway. "I'm not causing trouble," I told them. "I just want 5 minutes." They stepped in front of me. "I'm sorry." Behind them, the service had already started. Through the speakers mounted inside the chapel, I could hear the organ playing my grandmother's favorite hymn. Amazing Grace. She used to sing it while making peach cobbler every Sunday afternoon. She never sang perfectly. She always laughed whenever she forgot a line. I closed my eyes, and for just a second I could almost smell cinnamon and butter instead of fresh-cut flowers. Then the church doors closed completely. I stood outside listening to my grandmother's funeral from the parking lot. I cried alone. No family member came outside. No one checked on me. Not even my younger cousin Lily, who used to call me her big sister. After nearly an hour, people began leaving the chapel. I stayed where I was. Some relatives noticed me. Most pretended not to. A few whispered. One elderly aunt actually looked embarrassed enough to walk over. She squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" She glanced around nervously before lowering her voice. "Your uncle told everyone your grandmother changed her mind about you." I stared at her. "What does that even mean?" "He said she didn't want you there." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was impossible. 3 days before Grandma died, I'd been sitting beside her hospital bed. She held my hand so tightly that the nurse joked she'd never let me leave. She smiled and whispered, "Promise me you'll be there when they lay me to rest." I promised. Now everyone believed she had changed her mind. The aunt looked ready to cry. I didn't believe him. Then why didn't anyone call me? She had no answer. She simply hugged me and hurried away before anyone noticed. That's when Daniel finally walked outside. He didn't look sad. He looked annoyed. Like I was an inconvenience. "What are you still doing here?" he asked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "What am I still doing here? You made a scene. I never even got inside." "Exactly." My jaw dropped. "You locked me out of Grandma's funeral." He folded his arms. Mom didn't want unnecessary drama. I took one step closer. "Don't you dare put those words in her mouth." His expression hardened. "You weren't part of this family anymore." I felt something inside me crack. "When exactly did that happen?" "The day you questioned my decisions." I blinked. This wasn't about Grandma. This was about 18 months earlier, when I had asked why thousands of dollars kept disappearing from Grandma's savings account while he controlled her finances. He had called me paranoid. Then suddenly I wasn't invited to birthdays, Christmas, family dinners. Now, even the funeral. "I tried to protect her," I whispered. "No," he snapped, "you tried to embarrass me." Before I could answer, a black sedan rolled quietly into the church parking lot. Every conversation stopped. A tall woman stepped out carrying a leather briefcase. She looked around once before asking loudly, "Is Daniel Harrison here?" My uncle raised his hand. "I'm Daniel." She nodded politely. "I'm attorney Rebecca Collins." The entire parking lot went silent. "I've been instructed to read Margaret Harrison's final letter before anyone leaves." My uncle smiled with obvious confidence. "I'm sure we can handle that later." The attorney didn't smile back. "I'm afraid that's not an option." She opened her briefcase. "Your mother left very specific instructions." And then, she looked directly at me. "There is one person who must be present before I begin." Her eyes never left mine. "Emily Carter, would you please come stand beside me?" I wasn't supposed to find out my grandmother had died from a stranger. But that's exactly how it happened. I was standing in line at a grocery store on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed. It wasn't a family member. It was Mrs. Jenkins, the 80-year-old woman who had lived next door to Grandma for almost 20 years. Her voice was shaking. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry." I frowned. "Sorry for what?" There was a long silence. You don't know." My stomach tightened. "Know what?" "Oh, honey." She started crying before she could finish the sentence. "Your grandmother passed away yesterday morning." Everything around me disappeared. The cashier was talking. Someone behind me was pushing a shopping cart. A child was laughing near the checkout. But all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Yesterday. How could my grandmother die yesterday? And nobody in my family tell me. I dropped my basket right there in the store and walked outside into the pouring rain. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone while trying to call my Uncle Daniel. 1 ring. 2 rings. Voicemail. I called again. Blocked. I stared at the screen, unable to believe what I was seeing. Then I called my cousin Rachel. Blocked. My Aunt Susan. Blocked. Even my younger cousin Ethan, who had texted me happy birthday just 3 months earlier. Blocked. Every single one of them. Mrs. Jenkins called back. "I thought maybe they already told you." "They didn't." "Oh, sweetheart. When is the funeral?" She hesitated. "Tomorrow morning." Tomorrow? Less than 24 hours away. No phone call. No message. No obituary sent to me. Nothing. I drove straight to Grandma's house. The place where I had spent nearly every summer growing up. The blue porch swing was still there. The wind chime she loved was still hanging beside the front door. But every light inside the house was on. Cars filled the driveway. Family members were already gathering. I parked across the street and watched through my windshield. People hugged each other. Neighbors carried trays of food inside. Someone laughed. Someone else carried framed family photos through the front door. My grandmother's home already looked like it belonged to someone else. I took a deep breath and walked toward the house. Before I reached the front steps, the front door opened. My Uncle Daniel walked outside. For a brief second, surprise flashed across his face. Then it vanished. "What are you doing here?" His voice wasn't sad. It wasn't emotional. It sounded irritated. "I came because Grandma died." He crossed his arms. "You weren't invited." I honestly thought I had misheard him. "Uninvited. This is for immediate family." I looked around. My cousins are inside. They're immediate family. I am immediate family. Not anymore. Those 3 words landed like a punch to the chest. What does that even mean? It means you've made your choices. My choices. You chose to accuse me. There it was. The same accusation he'd been repeating for almost 2 years. After Grandpa died, Daniel took complete control of Grandma's finances. At first, nobody questioned it. Neither did I. Until Grandma accidentally asked me why her electricity bill hadn't been paid. She insisted she'd written Daniel a check 2 weeks earlier. Something didn't make sense. I helped her review her bank statements. Thousands of dollars had disappeared over several months. When I gently asked Daniel about it, he exploded. He called me jealous, ungrateful, a liar. Within days, relatives stopped returning my calls. Family dinners happened without me. Holiday invitations disappeared. One conversation had erased me from the family. Now he was trying to erase me from Grandma's goodbye. "I just want to pay my respects." Daniel shook his head. "No. I'll stay for 5 minutes. No. I won't even talk to anyone. No." His wife appeared behind him. She folded her arms and stared at me with a look that almost seemed rehearsed. "You should leave before you embarrass yourself." Embarrass myself? At my grandmother's house. I looked past them into the living room. Grandma's favorite quilt still covered the couch. Her reading glasses were sitting beside her favorite chair. A half-finished crossword puzzle remained on the coffee table. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it. Except she wasn't there. My eyes filled with tears. Daniel stepped closer and lowered his voice. "If you come to the funeral tomorrow, security will remove you." I searched his face for any sign that this was some terrible joke. There wasn't one. He meant every word. I whispered Grandma would never want this. His answer came without hesitation. "You don't know what she wanted." I turned and walked back to my car because I knew arguing wouldn't change anything. But as I reached the driver's door, someone called my name. Emma. I turned. It was Grandma's hospice nurse. She hurried across the lawn, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was watching. I've been trying to find you. You have? She nodded. Your grandmother asked about you every single day. I felt my chest tighten. She did. The nurse reached into her purse and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. I wasn't sure whether I should do this. She placed it in my hand. It's for you. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. There were only 6 words written in Grandma's familiar handwriting. Trust no one, wait for Rebecca. I stared at those 6 words until the ink blurred through my tears. Trust no one, wait for Rebecca. I read them again. Then again. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. Every loop, every crooked letter, every little flourish on the capital R. She had arthritis in her hands during the last few years of her life, and her writing had become shaky. No one could have faked that. I looked up at the nurse. What does this mean? She glanced nervously toward the house. I don't know. You must know something. I only know she asked me 3 times whether I'd been able to reach you. My heart skipped. Reach me. The nurse nodded. She said your phone wasn't working. My phone worked. That's what I thought. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. If Grandma believed she couldn't reach me. Who had told her that? When was the last time she asked about me? The morning before she passed. I swallowed hard. What did she say? The nurse hesitated. She looked at your uncle and asked why you hadn't visited. I froze. And he told her you'd moved to another state and didn't want anything to do with the family anymore. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I never moved. I know. I live 20 minutes away. I know. I covered my mouth. Grandma hadn't abandoned me. She'd been lied to. Every missed birthday. Every holiday. Every month I thought she'd forgotten me. She had probably believed I was the one staying away. The nurse gently touched my arm. She cried after he left the room. My legs nearly gave out beneath me. I should have said something. The nurse's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to, but your uncle controlled every visitor. He told us family matters were private. She looked ashamed. I'm so sorry. She walked away before I could ask another question. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at Grandma's note. One sentence kept repeating in my head. Wait for Rebecca. Who was Rebecca? A friend. A relative. A lawyer. I had never heard Grandma mention anyone by that name. The next morning, I drove to the church anyway. Maybe the security threat was just another bluff. Maybe someone would come to their senses. Maybe someone would remember that I was her granddaughter. Instead, 2 men in black suits were already standing at the entrance. One stepped toward me before I reached the sidewalk. Emma Collins. Yes. I'm sorry, ma'am. He didn't need to finish. I already knew. You've been instructed not to enter. I looked past him. The chapel was filling with people. I recognized nearly every face. Uncles, aunts, cousins, neighbors, former coworkers, even Grandma's bridge club. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. Then I noticed something strange. Near the front row sat a woman I'd never seen before. She wore a charcoal gray suit instead of black mourning clothes. A leather briefcase rested beside her chair. She wasn't speaking to anyone. She wasn't crying. She simply watched. Every few seconds she checked the church doors, almost as if she were expecting someone. Was that Rebecca? Before I could get a better look, my Uncle Daniel noticed me through the glass. Our eyes met. Instead of looking surprised, he smiled. Not a warm smile. A confident one. The kind of smile someone wears when they're certain they've already won. He leaned toward the mysterious woman and whispered something. She turned toward the entrance. Our eyes locked. Her expression changed instantly. Confusion. Then concern. Then determination. She stood up so abruptly that several people turned to look at her. Without saying a word to anyone, she picked up her briefcase and started walking straight toward the church doors. When my phone rang at 6:17 on a Thursday morning, I already knew something was wrong. Nobody calls before sunrise to share good news. I answered on the second ring. Emma. It was Grandma's pastor. His voice was gentle but heavy. I'm so sorry, Margaret passed away peacefully about an hour ago. For a few seconds I couldn't speak. I had spent the previous evening sitting beside her hospital bed, reading chapters from her favorite novel because her eyesight had become too weak to read on her own. Before I left, she squeezed my hand. Promise me one thing. Anything. When people show you who they really are, believe them. At the time, I thought she was talking about life in general. I had no idea she was trying to warn me. The funeral was scheduled 3 days later. I arrived early, carrying the bouquet of white lilies she always planted along her front porch every spring. As I reached the church entrance, my Uncle Richard stepped in front of me. You need to leave. I frowned, certain I had misunderstood. I'm here for Grandma. No, he said flatly, you're not. A few relatives turned to watch. Others quickly looked away. I don't want an argument, I said quietly. I just want to say goodbye. Richard shook his head. You lost that right. The words echoed in my ears. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. I honestly don't. He stepped closer until only a few feet separated us. Mom didn't want you here. I almost laughed from disbelief. She asked me to visit her every week. That changed. No, it didn't. It did. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket and waved it briefly before slipping it back inside. She made her wishes very clear. I couldn't read a single word on it. Something about the way he hid it so quickly made my stomach tighten. Then let me see it. That's none of your business. If it's Grandma's words, why can't I read them? His jaw clenched. Because I said no. For the first time, I noticed several family members avoiding eye contact. My cousin Olivia looked like she wanted to say something but stayed silent. Even my Aunt Carol, who had always treated me like a second daughter, stared at the floor. No one defended me. No one questioned him. It was as though they had all agreed that I no longer belonged. A church volunteer approached awkwardly. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we've been asked not to allow you inside. I looked through the open doors. At the front of the sanctuary rested Grandma's casket, surrounded by hundreds of white flowers. I had imagined this moment so many times during the weeks she spent in hospice. I thought I'd hold her hand one last time. Tell her I loved her. Thank her for raising me when my parents couldn't. Instead, I was standing outside like a stranger. Tears blurred my vision. I turned to leave, convinced the day couldn't get any worse. Then someone called my name. Emma. I looked back. An older woman in a navy suit was hurrying across the parking lot with a leather portfolio tucked under one arm. I've been looking for you. Do I know you? She offered a calm smile. My name is Sarah Whitmore. I shook my head. I'm your grandmother's attorney. Before I could respond, she added the sentence that changed everything. And unless you're present, I am legally forbidden from opening your grandmother's final letter.